The umbilical was 90 feet of flex tube between the Warden and my station, and I ran it in the dark with my breath roaring in my helmet and Silas gone from behind me. He had been right behind me. A second ago his lamp had thrown my shadow long down the wall of the tube. Then the lamp was gone. The shadow was gone. There was just me and a wet sound coming up the tube at my back. I did not turn around. 11 years out here had taught me not to turn around for a thing like that. So I ran. The frost on the ribs of the tube tore at my gloves. My chest was a closed fist. At the far end, the station lock was a square of dirty yellow light, and I aimed myself at it the way a drowning swimmer aims at the surface. The thing behind me did not run. It did not have to. I could hear that much in it. It came on slow. It came on sure. It let me spend everything I had and stayed the same distance back the whole time, close and unhurried. Then it said my name. It said it in Silas Wren's voice, wet, pleased, coming out of a throat that had been my friend an hour before. That was the sound that put me through the lock. I do not remember hitting the seal. I remember the yellow light swallowing me, and my hand slapping the plate, and the inner door coming down like a guillotine between me and the tube. I remember lying on the deck of Halden Relay with my helmet off, breathing air that stank of coolant and old coffee, staring up at a ceiling I had stared at for 11 years. And I remember understanding for the first time that I had done all of this before. That is, near the end of it. I keep starting there because that is where my head goes the moment I shut my eyes. The tube, the yellow light, the voice. But it does not start there. It starts quiet months earlier with a dead ship on a dead lane and 6 men who thought they knew what patience was. I have to walk it in order. The order is the only thing I carried out, and even the order I am no longer sure is mine. Halden Relay was a fuel stop and a listening post. It was the loneliest paying work still in the books, and barely legal at that. Picture a fat steel drum the size of a grain elevator, turning slow, hung out in the black on the Casher lane a long way from anything worth a name. We cracked ice off the rocks that drifted the lane and cooked it down to water and fuel, and we sold the fuel to freighters running the long haul between the interstations and the mining reach past the belt. That was the money. The other half of the job was the relay, a stack of antennas that caught the traffic off the lane and threw it inward, so ships out past the edge could still talk to the people who had sent them. Nobody thinks about a relay until it drops, same as nobody thinks about the yard light until the night it goes dark. 6 of us ran the place. 6 men, 40,000 tons of turning steel, and a lane so empty we sometimes went 11 weeks without a ship. 11 weeks looking at the same 5 faces, and I started learning things about those faces I never wanted to know. Who chews with his mouth open, who cries in the sleep rack when he thinks the hum covers it, who has quit washing. The hum covered a lot. The station never went all the way quiet. There was always the drum turning, and the deep churn of the crackers cooking ice down under the deck. After a while, the hum got in behind my eyes, and I stopped hearing it, right up until the day it changed. Then I heard nothing else. My name is Wyatt Kell. The stretch I am telling about, I was 39, and I had signed my 3rd rotation on Halden. Nobody with any sense signs a 3rd. The pay is the reason for a 1st rotation. The reason for a 2nd or a 3rd is harder to say out loud, and it ran different for each of us, though I have come to think it was the same thing under different coats. Some of the crew had no place inward they could stand to be. I had one. I had Nora. I married her on a 2-week furlough between my 1st rotation and my 2nd, in a rented room on Farrell Station, borrowed suit, her cousin standing witness. Then I spent the whole of my 2nd rotation and most of my 3rd telling myself I was building us a life out here, one fuel run at a time. The plain truth was I was scared of the life itself. Scared I would get inward and put my boots under her bed and find out I did not know how to be a husband in a room with a wife in it. Out here I always knew exactly what I was. That was the coat my fear wore. Nora sent letters up the relay once a month in a tight little packet. I read each of them twice and answered them once, and I told myself, 6 more weeks. Always 6 more weeks. I never once added up how many 6 more weeks I had already spent. That matters. Because when I say I wanted to go home, understand that I did not. Not really. Not until it was far too late, and by then, home was the one thing I could not reach. The chief was Emmett Dorn. Emmett had been on Halden longer than anybody, longer than the records could rightly account for, and that was the first wrong thing about him, though for years I read it as nothing worse than old. He was past 60 and built like something left out in the weather, all knuckle and gristle, white stubble he shaved maybe twice a week, eyes gone the pale of a sky with the color boiled out of it. He ran the station easy. The loose habit of hands that had done the work so long they did it without him, and he kept a paper log. That was the standing joke on Halden, Emmett's paper log. Everything on the station went into the system, every ice run and fuel sale and comms handoff logged and stamped and shot inward for the company to read. Emmett kept his own book on top of that. An actual book, real paper, gone soft and gray at the corners, and every single day he wrote in it with a stub of pencil. He would not say what he wrote. He would not let you look. Colt used to rag him about it. Old man's diary. What is it, Emmett, you writing down your dreams? Emmett would shut the book and lay his hand flat on the cover, not hard, just resting there, and say the same thing every time. A man ought to keep his own count. The system forgets whatever you tell it to forget. I took it for the kind of line an old spacer says to fill a silence. I know better now. He was not keeping a diary. He was keeping the one record of us that could not be reached and rewritten, and he had been keeping it longer than any of us had been alive, and the reason he would not let us read it was plain mercy. The other three were Silas, Colt, and Bo, with Graham riding the comms board. Silas Wren was the nearest thing to a brother I had out there. He came up on his first rotation, my second, a big easy man with hands like catcher's mitts and a laugh you could hear over the hum. He had a knack for making the station feel like a place instead of a sentence. He built things. Hand Silas a dead pump and a week in a bad mood, and he would give you back the pump running better than new, and the mood mended too. He had a wife inward and 2 kids he had never once been in a room with awake, and he showed me their pictures so often I could have drawn them. He was going home for good at the end of the rotation. He said it like he meant it, and I believed him, because Silas said things and then did them, which is rare in any man and near unheard of on the lane. Colt was the youngest. First rotation, barely 22, all mouth and nerves, the kind of kid who talks because the quiet frightens him. Bo was the opposite, lean and dark and close, kept to himself, worked hard, had done time inward for something he never named and none of us asked after. Graham ran comms. A soft, heavy man with a good ear and a bad heart, always half a breath short, always eating, and always the first to catch a thing on the board before it came clear on the scopes. That was the 6 of us the week the warden came back. I say came back, like I knew then that she had ever been here before. I did not. But it is the true word, and I will not trade it for a softer one to spare myself. A soft word is exactly what killed us. Over and over, more times than I can stand to hold in my head at once. It began on Graham's board, the way trouble out there almost always began, a whisper before it had a shape. We were 8 days off the last freighter and 40 from the next, dead in the empty middle of the run, and I was in the galley with Silas eating something the printer swore was eggs when Graham came over the all-call. His voice came flat and wrong. I knew, before I could have told you how, that the boredom was finished. Contact on the lane, Graham said. No transponder, no hail. Big. Big was the word that stood us up. A rock does not read big to a relay antenna. A rock reads like a rock. Big and quiet and dark meant a ship. A ship with no transponder and no hail meant a ship in trouble. A ship in trouble in the Castor Lane meant salvage, and salvage meant money, and money was the one thing that could still move 6 tired men fast. We went up to the ring in a knot, half of us still chewing, and packed in behind Graham at the board. It was the last easy minute any of us had. We spent it grinning like fools. The scope had her out at the edge of our reach. A cold return, sliding in along the lane. No drive plume, no running lights, no beacon. Dead in the black and drifting our way, and the heading ran near enough down the throat of the lane that Graham barely had to work to see she would pass close. "Give me a profile," Emmett said. He had come up last, and slow, and I remember his voice, set level in the way a voice sits level when a man is holding it that way on purpose. Graham worked the board, and the profile built line by line. The length came up first. Colt whistled low. The hull shape came up next. Then, last, deep in the return where the antenna had chewed long enough on the cold metal to pull a name off a registry chip, still faintly answering after God knew how long. A string of letters resolved on Graham's screen. He read it aloud. And the eggs went to a cold wait in my gut for no reason I could have named. Warden, Graham said. She is called the Warden. I had never once, in 3 rotations, seen Emmett Dorn flinch. He flinched now. He made a sound behind me, like a man hit low, all his air going out at once. When I turned, his gray face had gone the color of the ash we scraped out of the crackers, and his lips were moving. He was not talking to any of us. He was counting. I watched his mouth make the shapes of it, fast, under his breath, the way you count when you are afraid of the number you are going to land on. Then he stopped. He put one hand flat on the edge of the board to hold himself up, and he said one thing, so low I was the only one near enough to catch it. Not yet, he said. It is too soon. It is not supposed to be this soon. Nobody heard him but me. I did not know what to do with it, so I did the only thing there was to do with a piece that will not fit. I set it down and looked away from it, because the rest of them were lit up. A dead ship the size the Warden was reading, drifting in with no owner answering, was the kind of luck that happened to other crews. Lucky crews. The ones in the stories you traded on the long watches. Salvage law in the lane was old and simple. Find her dead and unclaimed, put a line on her, and a share of what she carried was yours, split by the book. A hull that size could carry enough to end a man's rotations for good. Colt was already doing the math out loud, talking too fast. Bo had the bright, stunned look of somebody who quit hoping for things a long time back and just got ambushed by hope anyway. Even Silas, steady Silas, had his big hand on the back of Graham's chair and was leaning in. She is really dead, Silas said. No plume, no lights. Graham, you getting anything warm off her at all? Nothing, Graham said. He had the headset pressed to one ear with a fat finger, cold as the rock around her. No drive, no life trace, no beacon but that registry chip, and the chip is just too dumb to know its ship died. She is a tomb. How old? I said. It was the first thing I had said. My voice came out wrong, and Silas glanced at me. Graham chased it down through the registry echo, and the number he came back with shut Colt up. The Warden had gone on the missing list a long time before any of us was born. Long enough that the loss had stopped being news and settled into a line in a database nobody opened. She had gone out on a survey run into the Reach, past the Belt, a mapping ship, 60 souls and a hold full of instruments. She made her turn for home, and then she stopped answering, somewhere out past the edge of the charted lane, and no wreck was ever found, and no distress was ever heard. The company that owned her ate the loss and folded, and got bought by the company that owned us. That was the whole story. It was old enough to be nobody's grief. And here she was, coming home down the Kasura lane on a cold drift, dead the whole way, on a heading that would bring her within a stone's throw of the only station for 100 million miles. That is a long way to drift and come out threaded right down the middle, I said. Currents, Graham said, but he said it like a man saying a thing he needs to be true. There are no currents in the black. Not the kind that steer. A thing turned loose out. There goes the way it was pointed, and keeps going until something with mass says otherwise, and nothing on that stretch of the lane had the mass to bend a hull that size onto our doorstep. I knew it. Graham knew it. We all knew it, down in the part of a spacer that reads the black the way old sailors read water, and we all did with it exactly what I had done with Emmett's face. We set it down, we looked away, because on the far side of it sat a share of a survey hull, and men will look away from almost anything with enough money stacked on the other side. Emmett had his color back by then, or his grip on himself, one or the other. When he spoke, the chief's voice was back, flat and easy, and I half believed I had imagined the rest of it. We do not put a line on her, Emmett said. The galley went quiet. Colt laughed, then saw the old man was not joking, and swallowed it. "Chief, that is a survey hole," Colt said. "That is everybody's rotations. That is my whole contract in one afternoon. You cannot just—" "I can," Emmett said. "And I am." He was not looking at Colt. He was watching the cold return slide across the scope, and his jaw worked like he had something caught in his teeth. "We log her. We report her inward. We let her drift on through. That is the whole of it. She is not our salvage. She is not anybody's. She is a grave, and you do not dig in a grave for the fillings." It was the wrong thing to say to 5 bored men with money in front of them, and Emmett was too old and too sharp not to know it was wrong. I have thought since that he said it anyway because he had no choice. Some part of him that half remembered was screaming under the flat old voice, and the most it could do was make him give an order he knew would not hold and put it on the record that he had given it. A man ought to keep his own count. It did not hold. Of course it did not, Colt argued. Bo backed him, quiet. Even Graham allowed as how the law was the law, and the law said dead and unclaimed was fair game. And Silas, who I was looking to, who I wanted at the old man's side on this, Silas rubbed the back of his neck and said the thing that turned it. "We do not have to board her tonight," Silas said. "We do not have to board her at all to claim her. We tag her, we slow her with the tug, we hold her off the station at distance. Then we call it inward and let the company decide. They say cut her loose, we cut her loose. But we let a survey hull drift on past, and it turns up stripped at the next station down the lane. That is on us, Chief. That is us handing our own salvage to the next crew over a bad feeling. It was reasonable. That was the horror of it, though I did not know yet it was horror. Every word Silas said was reasonable, and every reasonable word walked us a step nearer the tube in the yellow light, and not one of us could see it. Reasonable is a lamp you carry that only lights the ground right in front of your boots. Emmett looked at Silas a long time. Then he looked at me. I have gone back to that look more nights than I can count, because I think it was the last time he looked at me as a man he could still save. There was a question in it. He was asking me to be the second no. 2 no's from the 2 oldest hands might have held. 1 did not. And I said nothing. I stood there with the eggs cold and heavy in me, and Emmett's soft not yet still in my ears, and Nora's last letter unanswered in my rack, and I wanted the money the same as the rest of them. And I told myself the chief was being an old woman about a ghost story. I said nothing at all. That silence is the truest thing I own. I have spent everything since trying to give it back, and there is no giving it back. So Emmett nodded, slow, like a man nodding at a thing he has watched come for him from a long way off. "Tag her and hold her at distance," he said. "Nobody boards. Graham, raise the company and put my objection on the record, word for word." He turned to go, and stopped at the hatch, and said one more thing over his shoulder, not to any of us in particular. "She always finds the reasonable ones," he said. "That is her whole trick. She never once had to make a man do a fool thing. She just waits for the smart ones to talk each other into it." Then he went below to his cabin. I heard the small sound of him taking down the paper book. None of us spoke for a minute. Then Colt laughed to break it, and we let him. We ran the tug out that night. The tug was a stubby work sled we used to nudge ice rocks into the crackers, and Silas ran her better than anybody. He took her out on a tether and put a mag line on the warden's flank to slow her and steer her wide of the station. I rode the board and watched him work through the sled's little forward camera. That was the first real look any of us got at her, and the galley talk died on all our lips at once. She was wrong to look at. Not damaged. I had seen damaged hulls, wrecks, and burnouts and ships peeled open by a bad burn, and damage has a logic to it. You can read the story of what happened in the wreckage. The warden told no story I could read. She was a long spine of a ship, a mapping hull built to hang instruments off of, and she should have been a clean, straight shape. She was not. She was pitted all over with a fine, deep pox, 10,000 little mouths eaten into the metal, and in the low light off the sled's lamps, those pits did not sit still the way pits in metal are supposed to sit. They crawled. I told myself it was the lamps shifting on the tether, the shadows sliding as the sled drifted. Maybe it was. I watched the skin of that ship crawl in the lamplight, and I said nothing to Silas, because I had no word for it that would not have sounded insane. Down near the prow was the maw. Her forward instrument bay had been a wide-open throat in her working life, a bay where she ran her mapping arrays out into the black. It stood open now, a hole in the front of her, big enough to fly the tug through, and the edges were not cut, and they were not torn. They were folded. Folded soft and inward, all the way around, heavy structural metal turned in on itself like the lip of something living, like the mouth of a thing off the floor of a deep ocean that has never once come up into the light and does not know it is being looked at. Cold poured off the opening on the sled's temperature red, a cold below the cold of the black around it, a hole colder than empty space, which is not a thing that is supposed to be able to happen. And far back in the dark of it, faint, so faint I spent a long while telling myself I had invented it, there was the smallest bleed of light, not a working light, not a lamp, not a screen. A low, sick glow, the color of nothing healthy, deep in her throat, coming and going slow, like something breathing. Silas got the line on her and backed the sled off, and his voice came over the tether, and it was not the easy Silas voice. God, he said. Then, after a while, she is ugly, Wyatt. I do not like the look of her. And I said no. I did not either. We did not talk about the crawling. We did not talk about the folded mouth or the breathing light. He brought the sled home. We held the warden off the station at 10 miles on the mag line, like a dog on a run, and we all went to our racks. I lay in mine and listened to the hum, and told myself we had done it right. Tagged, held, reported, nobody aboard, the chief's own plan. I was nearly asleep when the station spoke. Not a voice. The station itself. A single deep note came up through the whole turning drum of her, up through the deck and the frame and the bones of my rack. A heavy metal sound of something big engaging. I knew that sound. Every man aboard knew it in his sleep, and it had no business sounding that night. It was the docking clamps. The great mag clamps of the main lock, the ones that reach out and take a ship and draw her in and hold her against the station to fuel. They had fired. All of them at once, the full ring. I felt the station shudder as they closed on something and began, slow, with 40,000 tons of patience, to reel it in. I was out of my rack and into the passage before I was awake. Silas was already up, Colt behind him, white to the lips. We went up to the ring together without a word, and the scope told me what my gut had already said. The mag line hung slack, the tug's leash, loose in the black, and the warden was coming in. Not drifting now, coming. Steady, dead straight down the throat of the approach, her folded mouth aimed at our lock, and every clamp we owned was reaching for her like a hand reaching for a hand it has waited on a long time. And not one of us had touched the board. Graham got there last, out of breath. He dropped into his chair and put his hands on the controls to abort the clamps, and stopped. They are not taking a command, Graham said. His voice had gone very small. Wyatt, the board is not mine. The clamps fired on a docking order, and the order is logged and stamped clean, and I did not give it, and the system has it down as authorized, and the authorizing hand. He stopped. Whose? I said. Graham looked up at me, and a thing had started in his eyes that I would come to know very well before the night was out. A man watching the floor of the world tilt under a fact he can neither set down nor pick up. Yours, Graham said. The docking order is under your hand, Wyatt. Stamped 4 minutes ago. And you have been standing in front of me the whole time. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. I looked at the stamp on the board, and it was my hand. My authorization. My 6-digit code that nobody else knew, laid down 4 minutes back while I stood 40 feet away in a passage arguing with no one. And the first thing I felt was not fear. It was that sick lurch you get looking at a photograph of yourself doing a thing you have no memory of doing. The body knows before the mind will allow it. My hands had gone cold. My mouth had gone wet. Some old animal at the base of my skull had laid its ears flat back, and up on top my mind kept saying, there is a mistake. There is a glitch. The code's crossed somewhere, while the animal underneath said only, quiet and certain, you have stood on this deck and felt this cold come into your hands before. Abort it, I said. My voice did not sound like mine. Graham, kill the clamps, blow the tether, shove her off. I do not care whose stamp is on it. Get her off my station. I cannot, Graham said. He was hitting the board with both hands. It will not take the abort. It says the docking is authorized and underway, and it will not let me touch it. Wyatt, it will not let me. Under our feet, the deep note changed, from the sound of pulling to the sound of holding. The whole drum of Halden shuddered once, hard, like a house shudders when something heavy leans against it in the dark, and then went still. In the stillness, we all felt it. A weight against the station that had not been there a minute before. She was docked. The Warden was docked at our main lock, folded mouth to steel throat, the tug's leash hanging slack in the black beside her. The station held her close and fast and welcome, the same as it held every ship that ever came to drink. That was when Emmett came up. He came up slow, and he came up dressed. None of the rest of us were. Dressed and shaved, with the paper book under his arm, and he did not ask what had happened. He looked at the board, saw the dock light burning steady, and shut his pale eyes a second at a word he had been dreading and expecting in the same breath. Then he opened them, and he was very calm. It was the worst calm I have ever seen on a living face. It was the calm of a man who has stopped hoping and started counting. All of you sit down, Emmett said, and listen, because I am only going to get to say this once before it starts taking it back out of me, and I need at least one of you to hold on to enough of it to matter. We sat. Even Colt sat and shut his mouth. There's a register a voice drops into that the body obeys before the mind has agreed to anything. I have been chief on Halden a long time, Emmett said. Longer than my papers say. My papers say 11 years, same as Wyatt's. He looked at me. You have been here 11 years. He looked at Silas. You, 6. Colt, 1. He went around us. That is what the system says, and the system is not lying, exactly. It is just saying the number it has been told to say. He set the book on the console and laid his flat hand on it. I have filled 4 of these, 4 books. This is the 4th, and it is near full. I write in it every day. I have written in it every day so long the habit runs under my thinking, and for the longest time I could not have told you why an old man needed 4 books of pencil to run a quiet fuel stop where nothing ever happens. I know why now. I understood it the 3rd time I opened a fresh book and found my own writing already in the front of it, my hand dated years back, telling me a thing I had no memory of writing. He opened the book. His hands were steady. Ours were not. She comes back, Emmett said. The Warden. She comes back to Halden on a turn. The turn is not even... It is not a clock you can set, but it is a turn, and I have it counted in here as close as anybody could count a thing that eats the counting. She comes back, and she docks, the way she just docked, on an order none of us remember giving, and we board her. He turned a page. Every time we board her. I have it written. Every time. I write it down the way you would mark where the fire exits are, so the next man has a map. And every time, the next man is me, and I do not remember the last time, because she takes it. Hold on to that, past everything else I tell you. She does not only take the men she keeps. She takes the memory of them out of the men she hands back. She cleans us. She sends us back into our own station, scrubbed down to the reasonable. The money and the salvage law and the bad feeling we cannot name and talk each other out of, and we run it all again, and she feeds again. The count in this book is the one thing she has never reached. Because it is paper. Because it is in my own hand. Because she does not know it is here. Nobody spoke. Graham was making a small sound that was not words. Colt had gone the color of the deck. How many times? I said. Emmett looked at me, and something moved behind the pale of his eyes that I think was pity. You do not want that number, Wyatt. But it is in the book, and you are the one who always keeps half hearing me, so I will give you the piece that matters. He turned to a page, near the back, close packed with pencil, column on column of small marks. There is a tally in here of every man Halden has lost since I started keeping it. Lost to accidents, lost to the crackers, lost to their own hand on the bad rotations. The real losses a station takes. And then there is a second tally. It is longer. It is the men lost to her, and it matches nothing in the system, because the system does not remember them, because she scrubbed them out of it the same way she scrubbed them out of us. He put his finger on a name. This is Silas Wren. I have written Silas Wren in the lost column 4 times. Silas made a sound like he had been hit. You are going home at the end of this rotation, Emmett said to him. Gentle now, so gentle. You have told me that 4 times. You have shown me the pictures of your kids 4 times, the same 2 pictures, and every time it was the first time for you, and every time I knew, and I could not say a word, because saying it does not hold. It never holds. She takes it back inside a day, and you are new again, and I am the only one left carrying it. He closed the book. I am tired, he said. Not a complaint, just a true thing. Set down flat. I am so tired. I have watched every one of you die more times than a man was built to watch anything, and then watched you walk back in fresh and grinning the next morning with no more idea than a calf, and I cannot do it again. I will not. So this time I am going to try the one thing the book says I have never tried. Every other time I sat down and counted and thought I could outthink her, and every other time she was already inside the thinking. This time I am not going to think. I am going to go over there and find the part of her that breathes and put a charge in it before she cleans me. Chief, I said, and I do not know what I meant to say after it. He did not let me get there. He put the book in my hands. It was warm from being under his arm. Heavier than paper should be. You keep the count now, Emmett said. Whatever happens to me over there, you keep this in your own hand, and you do not put it in the system, and you do not tell her it exists. If I do not come back, or if I come back wrong, and you will know wrong when you see it, then you finish what I could not, or you run. If you run, you take the book. He folded my fingers over it, the way you fold a child's hand shut over a thing it must not drop. She always finds the reasonable ones, Wyatt. That is you. You are the most reasonable man on this station. That is why she has had you 11 times, and it is why I am giving you the book, because the day you stop being reasonable is the day one of us finally gets out. I am betting the last of everything I have got on it being you. And while I stood there with the warm book in my hands and no words in my mouth, the lock cycled. Down the passage, the great inner door of the main lock, the one that only opens on a docked ship and a clean seal and a hand on the plate, ran through its cycle all on its own. The amber lights chased around its frame. The pressure note climbed. The bolts drew back with a heavy clunk. Somebody was opening it from our side. And all 6 of us were standing there in the ring. Every hand accounted for. I watched Colt understand that. Watched him count us the way Emmett had taught us all to count without ever knowing we were learning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All here. All hands on this side. And still the door was opening. Colt was closest to the passage, and Colt could not stand it. The not knowing. The kid never could stand the quiet or the not knowing. So he did the thing the young do. He went to look. Do not, Emmett said, sharp, but Colt was already at the mouth of the passage. I am just looking, Colt said. I am not going aboard. I am just going to see. That is the last thing Colt ever said to us. I am just going to see. He went around the curve of the passage toward the lock and the amber light, and we heard his boots on the deck. 4 steps. 5. Then they stopped. And then there was nothing at all. No cry, no struggle, no sound off the lock. Just the hum, and Colt's boots gone silent, and after a moment a smell coming up the passage on the station's own circulating air. A smell I knew and could not place, and then placed, and wished I had not. It was the cold that had poured off the folded mouth on the sled's red. The inside of a chest freezer shut and unplugged and forgotten for years. That reek of frost and stopped meat, rolling up the passage of my own station toward the six of us. Except we were five now, and not one of us had heard him go. Bo reached the passage first. I was half a step behind him, Silas behind me. Emmett came too, but Emmett came slow, and I understand now that he came slow because he already knew what waited there and had no reason to hurry to it. The passage curved around to the main lock, maybe 40 feet. Our own deck, our own gray walls, the cable runs, the handrails, the little laminated safety cards nobody had read in years. Our station, it was ours right up to the last 10 feet, then it was not. The frost started on the walls about where Colt's boots had stopped. It came up out of the metal and feathers, the way frost climbs a window, except it was climbing a wall that ran warm to the hand, a body length behind it. It thickened as it went, until the last stretch of passage to the lock was furred white and glittering in the amber lights, and the cold off it was the freezer cold, the stopped meat cold, and our breath smoked in it, though the air a single step back was station warm. And there in the middle of the white on the deck sat Colt's helmet, just the helmet, set down, not dropped, not thrown, not knocked loose in any struggle, set upright on the deck, neat, facing back, the way it had come, facing us. There was frost inside the visor, blooming out from the center in a slow star. There was no blood, there was no Colt. Past the helmet, the great inner door of the lock stood open onto the flex tube, and the tube ran off into the dark toward the folded mouth of the ship, and at the far end of it, small, that low, sick glow, came and went, the color of nothing healthy. Breathing. Bo said the kid's name once. Colt. Soft, like a question. The tube took it and gave nothing back. We are not going in there, I said. I had the book under my arm, Emmett's warm book, and my other hand flat on Bo's chest, holding him off the frost line. I was saying the reasonable thing, and even then, even with the helmet sitting there in the frost, I could hear the door built into the reasonable thing. We are not going in there. We seal this lock, we cut her loose, and I could not finish it, because there was no end to that sentence that gave us Colt back, and Bo knew it. He turned his dark, quiet face to me, and there was nothing quiet in it now. He is alive, Bo said. You do not know he is not. There is no blood. There is no. He is in there, and you want to seal the door on him. The thing is, I did want to. God help me. I wanted to seal that door and never think about the white feathers on the wall again, and Bo saw it in me. Something in the way he looked at me that I have never gotten out from under. He went for the tube. He went fast, before any of us could set our feet, across the frost line and through the open door and into the flex tube. He did not suit up, because there was pressure in the tube. She had mated clean and pressurized the tube herself, the way a station does for a ship it means to fuel. That was the most obscene part of all of it to me, somehow. That she kept the tube warm and full of air for us. That she made it easy, that she made it safe. That you could walk from my station into that ship in your shirt sleeves and breathe the whole way. Bo went into the tube after Colt, and Silas swore and went after Bo, and I stood 1 second longer on the warm side of the frost with the book under my arm. 1 second. Being reasonable. Then I could not be the man who stood on the warm side while Silas walked into that alone, so I went too. Emmett came last. I heard him behind me, and I heard him say, "Not to me," in that flat counting voice. So she takes us in the tube this time. I did not understand it then. I do now. He was reading it against the book, checking which ending we were walking into. And this one was new to him. This one was not written anywhere in his pages, because in every version the book remembered we had suited up and crossed to the ship proper. This time she had not waited for that. This time she had reached out and taken Colt off our own deck and set his helmet down to draw the rest of us into the tube after him. That meant she was doing a thing she had not done before. And the only reason a thing that has fed the same way 100 times changes how it feeds is that it has learned something new about the food. The tube was 90 feet. I have measured it in my sleep since. 90 feet of rib flex, frost on every rib, our boots ringing, the air going colder and thicker, with the freezer stink the deeper we went. The light at the end grew. That low-breathing glow resolved as we came on it into a shape, the folded mouth of her seen from inside the throat, the heavy metal turned soft and inward. And past the lip of it, the inside of the Warden, I had braced for a wreck. Corridors and dark and floating debris, the ordinary horror of a dead ship, a thing I had trained for and seen before. That was not what waited past the mouth. Past the mouth, it was warm. That is the detail I cannot make anyone who was not there feel. We came 90 feet through, killing cold, breath smoking, frost tearing at us, and we crossed the folded lip into the body of that ship, and it was warm. Blood warm, wet warm. The cold was behind us now, worn on her outside like a skin she kept on to keep us honest, and the inside of her was warm and close, and it was not made of metal. It had been, once. The proof of it was still there. The ghost of a survey ship still ran through it. The line of what had been a corridor, the empty sockets where instruments had hung, a hatch frame, a ladder, the bones of a made thing. But the metal had gone the way the mouth had gone. It had softened and folded and grown a hide over itself, a dark glistening hide pulled over the old ship's bones like a drum skin pulled over a frame. It gave under our boots. It was warm through the soles, and it breathed. The whole corridor rose and fell, slow, the wall swelling in and easing back. That low glow came from no lamp. It came from under the hide itself, a light down in the meat of her that pulsed with the swelling, brighter as the walls drew in, dimmer as they eased. And I understood, without wanting to, that we had walked in through a mouth and down a throat and were standing now inside something that wore the shape of a ship the way a hermit crab wears a shell. The shell was the least of it. On the walls, worked into the hide, all down the length of that breathing corridor, were the marks. I do not have a good word for the marks, and I have hunted for one. They were writing, or the tracks of writing, lines and clusters and branching runs of them, set into the hide from the inside, glowing faint with that same sick light. And they were not still. They moved. They crawled and rewrote themselves, slow, as we watched. There was a rhythm to them the eye wanted to follow, and following it made the back of my skull ache and my stomach turn, because it was almost sense. It sat right on the edge of being something I could read, and some animal part of me knew that if I ever did read it, if the marks ever resolved into meaning in my head, that was the end of me. That reading them was the door she wanted me through. Silas had his lamp up on them, his hand out toward one, not touching, just near. I knocked his arm down without a word. He let me. He did not look at me. We both knew we would not speak of it, the same as we had not spoken of the crawling or the mouth, because the not speaking was the last thin thing holding us to ourselves. Bo was ahead, deeper in, calling Colt now, not soft anymore, his voice cracking on it. And the corridor did to his voice what it did to all sound in that place. It did not echo, it swallowed. It drank the sound down into the hide and gave nothing back, so that Bo's shouts came shorter and closer, the farther in he got, dying a foot from his mouth, until he was somewhere ahead in the pulsing dark, shouting a name that made no noise, and we were following the bob of his lamp. Then his lamp stopped. We came up on him where the corridor opened out. It opened into what had been the survey bay, the big instrument hole behind the mouth. It was vast. It was the heart of her. The hide covered all of it, floor and curving walls, and the high dark of the ceiling lost up in the pulse, and it all glowed with the marks. And the marks ran thickest here, in great slow rivers toward the center. And at the center, held up in a web of the hide drawn out into cords and cables of itself, were the men. Not Colt, not yet. The old ones, the 60 souls the warden had gone out with, and the ones she had taken since. I knew them for men the way you know a thing in a nightmare, by a wrongness that carries its own certainty. They hung in the cords with their arms out and their heads back, and the hide had grown up over them and into them, and they were part of it now, faces still, mouths open. The low light moved through them the same as it moved through the walls. Where a face turned toward us, the eyes opened, slow, wet. They were not dead. They were not alive. They were not asking to be saved. They were the marks made flesh. They were where the writing went to be read. And out in front of them, newest, still mostly himself, still in his station coveralls, with the frost melting off them in the warm hung Colt, his arms already out, the cords already at his wrists and his throat, his eyes already open and turned to us, and already carrying that slow, wet light. When he saw us, or when the thing finishing with him saw us through him, Colt smiled, and Colt said in a voice that was almost his, almost the kid's, just a beat too slow and a shade too glad, he said, "It is all right. It does not hurt. Come and see." And behind him, through all the hanging men, the mouths moved together, 60 and more of them. They all said it with him, a dry whispering chorus the hide did not swallow, because she wanted us to hear this part. Come and see. Come and see. It does not hurt. Emmett walked past me toward the center of it. He walked past me, and past Silas, and past Bo, who stood locked and shaking at the edge of the light. He walked out across the hide toward the hanging men and the breathing core of her, the charge in his hand. A station demolition charge the size of a coffee can, the kind we used to split the big ice rocks. He had it armed. I could see the little red eye of it lit in his fist. He did not hurry, and he did not creep. He walked out to it the way you walk out to a thing you have faced 100 times and lost to every time, and have decided will not be the boss of you on the last. I have looked, Emmett said. He was talking to it now, to her, to the thing in the walls. His voice did not shake. I have kept the count. You have had this station longer than any of these boys has been drawing breath, and you have had me worst of all, because you made me watch, and then let me go on watching. He was at the edge of the hanging men. Colt's slow, smiling face turned to follow him. Well, I am done being counted. I am going to be the one number you cannot carry. He knelt at the base of the core, where the cords ran thickest and the light pulsed brightest, right up against the breathing meat of her. He set the charge into the soft of it. He laid his old scarred hand flat on the charge, the same way he laid it flat on the book. And he looked back over his shoulder at me, across all that horror, and he was not afraid, and he said the last thing he ever said to me. Run, Wyatt, he said. Be the unreasonable one. Just this once. Then Colt's arm came off the cord. It came off soft and slow, reached down, and closed over Emmett's hand where it lay on the charge. The kid's fingers were wrong, too long, the hide grown out along them. Colt leaned down out of the web with that slow, glad smile, and put his mouth by the old man's ear. I could not hear what he said. The hide drank it. But I saw Emmett's face while he heard it, and I have wished ever since that I had not, because Emmett had walked out there ready to die, and he had made his peace with dying, and whatever the kid's voice poured into his ear was not about dying, it was worse than dying. It was the thing Emmett had spent 4 paper books and 100 lifetimes keeping himself from knowing, and his face when he heard it came apart. The calm went, the count went. He made a sound I will not try to set down. His hand slid loose on the charge. The red eye was still lit, still armed, and he did not press it. He could not. She had reached past everything he had and switched off the last of him from the inside. The cords came down over him, soft, unhurried, and drew him up into the web beside the kid. The charge sat armed and useless in the meat of her, with an old man's slack hand still resting on it. She did not even bother to put it out. That broke us. Bo went down to his knees. Silas grabbed the back of his collar and hauled, and Bo came up screaming. And I had the book under my arm and Emmett's last word in my head, run, and I want to say I chose. There was no choice in it. There was only the animal at the base of my skull, which had been waiting the whole time for the reasonable man on top to finally shut up. It took the wheel. And I ran, and I dragged Silas by the arm, and Silas dragged Bo, the three of us back down the breathing throat the way we had come, boots tearing at the soft hide. The marks flared bright as we passed, as if the light followed us, as if she were lighting our way out because our running was part of the thing too. Behind us the chorus did not stop. 60 voices, and Emmett's new among them, and Colt's, all of them saying, come and see, it does not hurt. And under it now a lower sound, one the hide did not swallow, a deep, wet working sound like a great throat, swallowing slow, coming from everywhere, coming from the walls. I did not look back. I had learned that much, at least. I did not look back. We lost Bo in the throat. I did not see it. That is the mercy and the horror of it at once, that I did not see it. I only knew it by the change in the dark ahead when a light goes out behind you. One moment Silas had Bo's collar, and the next the drag of him was gone off Silas's arm, and Silas stumbled at the sudden lightness, and near went down, and I caught him and hauled him on. There was no cry. There was never any cry. That was her way. She took the sound first, and the man second. Bo, who had done his time inward for a thing he never named, who worked hard and kept to himself and could not stand to seal a door on a boy, Bo was simply not with us anymore. We ran on. The only other thing to do was stop, and there was nothing behind us now but her. We hit the folded mouth and crossed the lip, and the cold took us like a fist. Her skin, the killing cold she wore on the outside over all that wet warmth. We went from blood warm to freezing in a single stride across the lip, and our sweat turned to ice on us, and the breath slammed back into us in a fog. In that first stride I understood why she wore it. Why a thing so warm inside kept a hide of death on her hull. The cold was the honest part of her. It was the only true thing she showed. Everything soft and warm and easy was the lure. The tube she pressurized. The air she gave us to breathe. The reasonable voice of a smiling boy. The cold was what she actually was, and she wore it on the outside, where a wiser animal than us would have read it and run, and she hid the warmth deep inside, where the food would walk to it. 90 feet of tube. Frost on every rib. The station lock a square of dirty yellow at the far end. Small, so small. Silas beside me. Both of us running with nothing left in the tank but the running. And then Silas was not beside me. His lamp threw my shadow long down the wall of the tube, and then the lamp was gone, and the shadow was gone, and I did not turn around, and the wet sound came up the tube at my back, patient, unhurried, because it had never once in all its turns had to hurry. It said my name in his voice. But before it said my name, it said one other thing, and this is the part I have never been able to stand saying. It said it in his voice too. The real one. The easy one. The brother's voice. It said, Wyatt, wait. And I almost did. That is what I carry. Not the horror voice. The real one. Wyatt, wait. The way he would have said it any ordinary day across the galley, and my whole body wanted to turn to it. Wanted to go back for him the way he would have come back for me. And the animal that had the wheel would not let me. It drove me on toward the yellow light, while everything human in me tore backward toward my friend. That is how I know it was not courage that got me out. A better man turns around. A better man is in the web right now, with his arms out and the light moving through him. I lived because the worst and oldest part of me refused for 90 feet to be a good man. Not because I escaped. I did not escape. I failed to go back. Those are not the same thing, and I have never once been able to make the one feel like the other. I hit the lock. I do not remember hitting it. I remember the yellow light swallowing me, and my hand on the plate, and the inner door coming down like a blade behind me, sealing off the tube, the cold, the wet, patient sound. I got the door down, and I fell on the deck of my own station, in the coolant and coffee smell of 11 years, the book digging into my ribs under me, and I could not get up. That was when the station spoke again. The deep note, the clamps. I felt it through the deck against my cheek, the whole drum of Halden shuddering and letting go, the great mag clamps opening all at once on their own, the way they had closed, releasing her. I felt her come off us, the weight lifting away from the station, sated, done. Through the deck I felt her turn, slow, 40,000 tons of patience, and start back out down the throat of the approach toward the lane, dark and dead and drifting, exactly as she had come, carrying Colt and Bo and Silas and Emmett and 60 souls older than my grandfather out into the black to sleep again until the turn came round. She let me go. I lay on the deck and felt her let me go, and I did not understand yet that letting me go was the whole point of me. And I was grateful. God forgive me. In that first minute I was grateful, the way the one calf the wolves leave behind is grateful, not knowing it was left on purpose, not knowing it is being saved for the calving. I do not know how long I lay there. The station has no night and no day. It has the hum, and the hum does not care. I lay in it until my body was done shaking, and then a while past that, and then I got up, because there was nothing else to do with being alive, and I went to find Graham. Graham had stayed on the board. That was the plan, what plan we had. Graham on comms, holding the station, our one line back to the world. I went up the curve of the passage toward the ring, calling his name, and my voice came back too loud, now that there were not 5 other men to soak it up. Graham did not answer. I came around into the ring, and he was still in his chair. Still in his chair, headset still on, hands still on the board still lit. For one whole second I thought he was all right. I thought, here is one. Here is one of us the ordinary way, sitting his post. Then I came around in front of him and saw his face. He was smiling, slow and glad and a shade too wide. His eyes were open and turned to me, and the low, sick light moved in them, back and forth, slow, wet. The frost had come up out of the board under his hands and furred his fingers to the controls. When he saw me, or when the thing that had come up the comms line into him while we were aboard saw me through him, Graham said, in a voice that was almost his, just slower, just gladder, "You are back. Good. Sit down. It is almost time to bring them in." I did not stay for the rest. I have learned that much across all the turns I do not remember. When one of them turns that face on you and starts to talk, you do not stay for the rest of the sentence, because the sentence is the door. I backed out of the ring with my eyes on him, and he did not get up to follow. He only turned that slow, bright smile to keep me in it, his frosted hands still working the board. And I understood that she had not needed to take Graham aboard at all. She had come up the one line we kept open to the world. The relay, the comms, the thing we were proudest of. She had taken him at his post without a soul in the room hearing it happen, and left him there running the board, because she had a use for a man running the board, the same as she had a use for me. And the uses were not the same, and I did not want to know mine. So I sealed the ring. I had that much left in me. There are blast hatches on Halden between the ring and the rest of the station, meant for a hull breach. I dropped one between me and Graham. I heard his voice come thin through it a while, patient, unhurried. "You are back. Sit down. It is almost time." Then I got far enough down into the body of the station that the hum covered it, and I was alone, truly alone. One man in 40,000 tons of turning steel, and the ship that had emptied it already, miles gone and drifting, dark and dead, out toward the lane. The first thing I did with being alone was try to call for help. There is a hard line on Halden, not the relay. The relay was Graham's, and Graham was hers now. But there is a separate hard channel, a distress set, for the day the relay itself dies. A dumb little rig down on the engineering deck that does one thing, It throws a mayday inward on a frequency the whole sector is bound by law to keep an ear on. I went down to it through the empty station, with the book under my arm, past the empty racks, past the galley, where the printer had made a plate of the eggs Silas never finished, and the plate sat there going cold, past Colt's open locker, with the kids' things still in it. I got to the distress set, and I powered it up, and I keyed it, and I started to talk, and I could not remember what to say. Not the words. The words were easy. Mayday, Station Halden, crew lost, request response. I could not remember what had happened. I stood there with the key open and the set humming, ready to throw my voice 100 million miles, and I reached back for the thing I was reporting, and it was going even then, that fast. It went the way a dream goes the moment I woke and reached for it. The whole of it there, a breath before, and then just the shape where it had been, already closing. I could see Emmett's face, and could not remember the book was his. I could see a tube and yellow light, and could not remember whose light. I could feel a grief the size of the station, and I could not, for a run of seconds that scared me worse than the ship had, I could not remember who I was grieving. And my hand hurt. I looked down at the hand that was not on the key, my left, and there was a mark on it, on the back, over the tendons. A fine, faint line of the sick light under the skin. Just one. A single branching run of it, like the marks on her walls, healing itself into me slow. It did not hurt the way a cut hurts. It hurt the way a half-remembered word hurts, sitting just out of reach and refusing to come. An itch behind the meaning of things, and looking at it, I understood how she cleaned us. Not a machine, not a wipe. She left a little of herself in every man she handed back, one mark, working inward, eating the memory of her out of him from the inside, the way a stain lifts a word off a page. By the time it finished, he would be new again, reasonable again, 6 more weeks again. He would key a distress set and forget what the distress was, and power it down and go make coffee. I nearly did. My hand was on the switch to kill it. I had already lost the reason I had turned it on. And then the book slid out from under my arm, where the sweat had worked it loose, and hit the deck at my feet and fell open. I bent to pick it up, and I saw the writing, and the writing stopped my hand. It was my own, not Emmett's pencil. Further back in the book, on a page gone soft with handling, there was a block of writing in ink, in a hand I knew the way I know my own face in a glass without ever really looking at it. My hand, my letters, the lowercase g I have made the same way my whole life. I crouched over it there on the engineering deck, the distress set humming forgotten above me, and I read what I had written. And the cold that came into me then was worse than the tube, worse than the mouth. It was the cold of a door opening in the back of my own skull. Wyatt. That is what it said at the top, in my own ink. Wyatt, read this slow, because you are already forgetting and you do not have long. I crouched on the deck and read it slow. If you are reading this, it said, then she has come back, and you have lived, and the others have not, or not in any way you would call living, and you have the book in your hands, which means the old man gave it to you, or you took it, and either way it is yours now, and you have to believe it, even though every reasonable thing in you is going to tell you not to. I know you. I am you. I know exactly how you are going to try to explain this away, because I tried every one of those ways myself, and I am running out of page, and the light in the back of my hand is almost through with me. So I am going to spend the last of it on the only 3 things that matter. The first thing. It is real. However much of it has gone soft and dreamlike by the time you read this, it happened. All of it. The ship and the mouth and the worm inside, and the men in the web. The reason it feels like a dream is that she is turning it into one. That is what the mark on your hand is doing. Do not scratch at it. Do not go to the medical bay and put a scan on it, because the scan will show nothing, and the nothing will comfort you, and the comfort is her. The mark is her taking it back out of you. Fight it the only way it can be fought, which is the second thing. The second thing. Write it down. Now, today, while you still have any of it in this book, in ink, in your own hand, because paper is the one place she cannot reach. She lives in the system. She came up the relay into Graham the way she comes up every open line, and she is in the logs and the records and the stamps. She can write a docking order under your hand and wipe a man out of the roster, and she will, but she cannot touch the book, because the book is not a signal, it is a thing, and she has no hands for things. The old man knew that. He has known it longer than anybody. So keep the count. Every man she takes, write his name. Every turn, write the date, as near as you can find it. It will not save them. Nothing saves them, and you have to make your peace with that, or it will break you the way it broke him. But the count is the one thing she has never eaten, and as long as one man on this station is keeping it, she has not won all the way. That has to be enough. It is all there is. The third thing, and this is the one I am most afraid you will not believe, so I am going to set it down plain, and you are going to have to sit with it. They come back, the men she took tonight. Silas, and the young one, and the quiet one, and whoever else. You watch them go, and you are grieving them right now. I know you are, because I did. I grieved them so hard I could not breathe. And then the lock cycled, and they walked back in. All of them. New, clean, grinning, like it was the first morning of the rotation, because for them it was. She gives them back the way she gives you back, marked and emptied and reasonable, and they will not know you. They will not know any of it. Silas will show you the pictures of his kids, and it will be the first time for him, and you are going to have to decide, standing right there, whether to smile and look at the pictures or grab him by the collar and scream the truth into his face. I am begging you, from the far side of a turn I can barely remember, do not scream it into his face. It does not hold. I have done it. The old man has done it more times than his books can hold. You tell them, and it slides off them like water off glass. And for one bad hour, they think you have finally cracked out here. And then the next turn comes, and she scrubs that too. And you have spent your one true thing, your knowing, for nothing, and made a friend look at you like you are sick. Do not do it. Keep the count in the book, and let them have their clean mornings. That is the last mercy left on this station, and you are the only one who can give it, and giving it is going to be the loneliest work a man ever did. It's signed off there, near the bottom of the page, and the last lines came harder, the letters coming apart. The way a man's hand comes apart, when the thing writing it is being switched off in the middle of the writing. The very last of it was barely words at all. And then, right at the edge of the page, one more line, in a sudden, clear hand, as if I had gathered the last of myself to set it down. She keeps one man back every time to run the trap. This turn it is you, next turn it will be you again. It is always the reasonable one, and out here that has always been you and the old man, the two who can be counted on to do the sensible thing, which is the only thing she needs, because the sensible thing is the thing that walks the next crew aboard. You are not the survivor, Wyatt. You are the bait she keeps in good condition. Now put down the distress key, because you have already forgotten why you picked it up, and go write their names. I read it twice. Then, because the man who wrote it knew me better than any living person ever had, I looked up at the distress set, and I could not remember turning it on, and my hand was on the switch to kill it. The Mayday I never sent sat open on a dead frequency, throwing my silence inward to a sector that would never answer, because a station that cries Mayday and then goes quiet is a station that had a scare and sorted it out. They log it, and they let it drift on through. The same as we logged the Warden, the same as everyone always logs everything. The whole reasonable machine of the world, built to look away from exactly this. I powered the set down. I did not decide to. My hand did it while I sat there, the same way my hand had stamped a docking order I never gave. And I understood the writing was true. I was already most of the way gone. The mark had eaten the last hour out of me while I crouched there reading about it. If I did not move right then, in that minute, and do the one thing the book told me to do, I would stand up a reasonable man with a bad dream fading behind his eyes and go make coffee and wait for my crew to wake up. So I dug Emmett's pencil out of the crease of the book where he kept it, and I turned to the first blank page after his last entry, and I made myself write the names while I still had them. Colton. I did not have his family name. The system did, but the system was hers, so I wrote what I had. Colton, the youngest, first rotation 22, went to look because he could not stand the quiet, taken off our own deck, helmet set down in the frost. Bo. Taken in the throat. I did not see it. There was no cry. Graham. Taken at his post up the comms line while the rest of us were aboard. Given back to his own chair, running the board with her light in his eyes. Silas Wren. And I had to stop on Silas Wren. I sat there on the deck of the engineering level of a station whose name I could no longer entirely hold, a pencil in my hand and a mark eating me from the wrist inward, and I wrote my friend's name. And under it, because a count is only true if it is complete, I made myself write the thing I had told no one and would never get to tell him. He said wait in his own voice, and I did not wait. I want it in the count that I did not wait. Emmett Dorn, Chief, keeper of the count before me, walked out to the middle of her with an armed charge, and she switched him off from the inside before he could press it, and took him up into the web with his hand still on it, gave me the book first, told me to be the unreasonable one, just once. When I finished, I looked at the mark on my hand, and it had grown while I wrote. Another fine branching run of the sick light laid down beside the first, and I understood that the writing itself was a race. Every minute I spent keeping the count was a minute the mark spent taking it. This was the shape of the rest of my life now, however long she chose to keep me in good condition. One man with a pencil, writing names into paper as fast as a stain could lift them out, alone on a turning drum of steel 100 million miles from anyone, keeping the one count she could not reach, for a crew that would wake in the morning and not know his face. And then, up through the deck, through the whole body of the station, came the deep note of the lock cycling. A warmth of hope went through me before I could stop it, before I could remember. Hope. The animal's hope. Somebody is coming. I got up off the deck with the book in my hand and went up to meet them. And God help me, part of me was running. They were in the passage by the lock when I came up, and they were laughing. The laughing is the part I cannot get out of me. I came around the curve of the passage with the book in my hand, and the names still wet in it, and my heart going like a boy's, and there they were, all of them. In the warm yellow light of the open lock, the tube sealed and dark behind them. Colt and Bo and Silas, dusting themselves off. Colt, in the middle of some story, with his hands going, Bo shaking his head at it, Silas with that big, easy grin on him. The passage that had been furred white with killing frost an hour ago was gray station wall again, warm to the hand, ordinary. The freezer smell was gone, and there was not a mark on any of them I could see, except the one I knew to hunt for. The fine, faint line of sick light healing into the back of each hand, one apiece, working inward. Not one of them so much as glanced at it. Kel, Silas said, when he saw me. He said my name the way he said it every ordinary morning, glad and rough, and came down the passage and clapped that catcher's mitt of a hand on my shoulder. His hand was warm. Through my coverall I could feel the small, cold line of the mark in his palm against me, and he did not know it was there. There you are, Silas said. Colt swears the printer made him real bacon this morning, and I am calling him a liar. Settle it. You ever once seen that printer make bacon? And I stood there with the book in my hand and every name in it screaming, and I looked into the face of my friend, my brother, who had said wait to me in the dark an hour before, in a voice I would hear the rest of whatever this was, who I had not gone back for, whose name I had just written in the lost column under a confession I would never get to make to him. And he looked back at me with not one grain of it in his eyes, clean as a boy, waiting for me to laugh and settle a bet about bacon. Standing there, I understood exactly what the man in the book had been trying to spare me. I understood why the old man had been so tired, tired in a way that had frightened me before I had the first idea why. And I opened my mouth. I do not know to this day what would have come out of it. The truth, maybe. Silas, you died tonight. You have died 4 times. We are cattle. That ship is coming back. Maybe I would have grabbed his collar the way the book begged me not to and screamed it into that clean, grinning face. I got as far as opening my mouth. And Silas, who had known me 6 years and God knows how many turns neither of us could count, Silas caught something crossing my face, some shadow of what I was carrying, and his grin softened, and he squeezed my shoulder, and he said, "Quieter. You look like hell, Wyatt. You sleep at all." It was so exactly him. So exactly the man who noticed when you were hurting and made room for it without making a thing of it. Whatever I had been about to do went out of me all at once. I shut my mouth, and I let him have his clean morning, because it was the only thing left in the whole turning universe I could give him. The book was right. It was the loneliest thing I have ever done. I have done it many times since. It does not get 1 grain easier. Never seen it make bacon, I said. My voice came out steady. I do not know how. Colt is pulling your leg. Ha, Silas said, and turned and bawled it down the passage, and Colt hollered back, and Bo shook his head, and the 3 of them went off toward the galley, ragging each other. 3 dead men in the warm yellow light, arguing about bacon. I stood there and watched them go, the book held against my chest with both arms like the one thing that had not gone over the side. Then I went and opened the blast hatch to the ring. Graham was at the board, himself. The light was gone from his eyes and the frost was gone off his hands, and he was eating something out of a pouch and complaining about his back. And when I came in, he looked up and said the relay had thrown errors all night. He had half a mind to write it up had I been messing with it. I said no. He grumbled and went back to it. I looked at the back of his hand where it worked the board, and there was the mark, 1 fine line, healing in. Graham did not feel it. The roster on the board over his shoulder read, 6 souls aboard, Station Halden, all present, all well. There was no record anywhere in the system of a ship called the Warden, because the system was hers, and she had wiped her own name out of it on her way back to sleep. Only the book in my arms said different. The book, and the 2 marks on my hand, and the thing behind my eyes that would not go quiet. 6 souls aboard. The board said 6. I counted the station in my head the way the old man had taught us all to count without knowing why. Me, Silas, Colt, Bo, Graham. 5. The board said 6, and the board was not wrong. The board is never wrong about a number. The board just counted different than I did, because the board counted the chief, and the chief's cabin was 2 decks down, the light on, the bunk made, a stub of pencil gone from the crease of a book I now carried. By the middle of the next watch, when I could not stand the board's number any longer, I went down to Emmett's cabin to see. He was not there. Of course he was not. She had taken him for good, up into the web, with his hand on the charge. The one man she had finally decided to keep instead of hand back. Maybe because he had gotten too close with that charge. Maybe just because his usefulness had run out after all the turns. An old tool set down. His cabin was empty. But the board still read 6, and the roster still listed Dorn, Emmett, Chief, present, and well, because in the only record that could be reached and rewritten she had left him standing at his post, the same as she had left Graham smiling at his. I was the one thing in 100 million miles that knew the chief's chair sat empty. I sat down on his made bunk with his book in my hands, and I did the only thing there was to do. I found the page where his count ended and mine began, and I made the mark for the turn, and I wrote his name in full this time, Emmett Dorn, Chief, and the date as near as the book let me reckon it. Then I sat in the empty cabin of the man who had carried this alone longer than I had been alive, and I finally understood the pale, tired thing that had lived behind his eyes. And I was not angry at him anymore for handing me the book, the way some small part of me had been, the way I had resented being handed a weight I never asked to carry. He had not handed me a weight. He had handed me the one thing that had ever let him stay himself. Now it was mine. I was the keeper of the count on Halden Relay, Out past the cabin door there was a crew of clean, grinning ghosts eating bacon that was not bacon. And out past them, miles gone and drifting dark down the lane, was the warden, asleep again, patient, on her turn. The only question left in my life was how long the turn ran. The book had that answer too. I did not want to read it. I read it. The turn was not a clock. The old man had written that on the first page. I had read it and not believed how much it mattered until I lived inside it. If the turn had been a clock, I could have counted down to it, dreaded it, clean marked off the days. She did not come on a clock. She came on something closer to a tide that runs on no moon, sometimes short, a handful of weeks, sometimes long, most of a year. The not knowing was itself part of what she did to the keeper. You cannot hold your breath for a year. So you let it out. You let the days go ordinary. You laugh at cold stories and eat the printer eggs and answer the letters. In every ordinary day, the not knowing whispers that maybe it was a dream after all. Maybe the book is a sickness. Maybe there was never any ship. That whisper was the mark. Still working, still lifting, always lifting, because the mark never finished. That was the cruelest thing I learned in the long stretch after, crueler than the turn itself. On the men she handed back, the mark did its work in a day and healed clean, and they were new. On me it did not finish. It slowed, it lightened, it never closed. She did not want the keeper new. She wanted the keeper reasonable, and there is a difference, and she knew the difference better than I knew myself. A new man cannot run a station and receive the next crew and do the sensible thing at the right minute. A new man knows nothing. She needed me knowing just enough to work the station and doubt the book. So she left me the 2 marks and let them fade to almost nothing, and there they stayed, faint silver lines on the back of my hand a doctor would have called an old scar. On the good days I could not feel them at all, and I would sit with the book and read my own writing and think, a sick man wrote this, out of his mind. On the bad days I could feel them, cold, an itch behind the meaning of things, and I would know every word of it was true and wish to God it were not. I took to marking the turns 2 ways after that, her way, in the book, in ink, the names and the dates, and my own way, private. A single scratch on the underside of my bunk frame with a pocket driver, one for every time she came and went, down where the light never reached, and no scan would ever think to look. I could not have said why I needed a second count when I already had the first. I think I needed one tally that was only mine, one she had never once filled in for me in my sleep. Nora's letters kept coming. They came up the relay once a month in the same tight little packet, and now I knew the relay was hers, that every word of my wife reached me through the same throat she had come up into Graham. I could not stop reading them, I could not stop answering them, and I hated what the reading and the answering had turned into. Nora wrote the way she always wrote, warm and dry and a little tired, asking when, always when. When are you coming home, Wyatt? You have done 3 rotations. We said 2. The money is enough. It was always enough. Come home. I would sit with her letter and the book, side by side, on the old man's bunk, the one asking me home, the other telling me why I never would. And every month it hollowed me out fresh to understand that the 6 more weeks I had been telling her for 3 rotations was not only my cowardice, it was hers. She had found the shape of me the same way she found the shape of every reasonable man, and the shape of me was a man who would always dig up a good reason to stay one more turn. She did not even have to work at it. She only had to leave the coward I already was where he stood and let him do her keeping for her. I used to think I stayed out here because I was afraid to go home to my wife. I know now I stay because if I go, there is no one to keep the count, and the next crew comes aboard blind, and the turn comes, and there is no book, no names, no one who knows to seal the ring or hold the line or bite down and not scream it into a clean, grinning face. I cannot leave them that. She knew I could not. That is the leash, and it is a better leash than any clamp, because I hold it myself and call it decency. I tried to leave once. I will not pretty that up. There is a pod on Halden, a hard little lifeboat rated to throw one man inward on a long, slow burn to the nearest station, weeks of it, but survivable. 1 watch, When the not knowing had gone quiet and the marks had faded and the book felt like a fever I had woken from, I packed a bag. I put the book in it. I did that much, even doubting. I went down to the pod bay and climbed in and ran the launch. The pod ran its checks, green all down the line. And then the last light, the release, would not go. It sat amber. Docking clamp engaged, the little screen said. Manual override required. Chief authorization. I was chief now. The board said so. And I put in my code, my 6 digits that nobody else knew, and the screen thought about it and came back. Authorization logged. Release denied. Hold order in effect. Authorize this watch under your hand. I sat in that pod and looked at the screen, telling me I had ordered myself held 4 minutes back while I packed a bag 2 decks up. The cold came into my hands the way it had the first night. I climbed out of the pod. I did not try again. She keeps her stock in good condition. She does not let it wander off. So I stayed, and I kept the count, and I watched them. That was the work under the work. The watching. Its own slow horror, stretched thin across the ordinary days. I knew things about my crew now that no man should know about the men he eats breakfast with. I knew Silas would show me the pictures of his kids again, and he did. One quiet watch a few weeks in, dug them out with that shy, proud grin, and said he did not think he had shown me these. I looked at the 2 faces I could have drawn from memory and said, No, you have not. They are beautiful. How old are they now? He told me. It was the first time for him and the 40th for me and the 5th by the book's count, and I did not let one thing show on my face, and when he put the pictures away, he looked lighter. Then I went and was sick, quiet, 2 decks down, and came back and finished my watch. I knew Colt got the shakes on the long empty nights and needed talking down, and I learned to be there before they took him. I knew Bo went quiet a certain way the last week before a freighter came. Some old inward grief the freighter stirred, and I learned to leave him alone in it. I knew my crew, the way the old man had known us, from outside their own time, from the far side of a wall they could not see. And knowing them that way was the loneliest love I have ever carried, because it was all give and no telling. A love you can never once say out loud stops feeling like love some days and starts feeling like a haunting. On those days I understood the ghost on Halden Relay was not the ship. It was me. I was the one who could not rest and could not move on, walking the halls with a grief the living could not see. She had not made a survivor of me. She had made a haunt. The company rotated a man in a while after Emmett to fill the slot the board still swore was filled. His name was Owen. I am going to set down what I did with Owen because it was the closest I ever came to breaking the shape of it, and because it failed, and the failing taught me the last thing I know about her. Owen came up green off the supply run. First rotation, a lean, quiet kid, not much older than Colt had been, a mother inward he wrote to, and a way of standing in a doorway like he was not sure he was allowed through. And the watch he came aboard, I decided I was done letting it run. I had the book, I had the whole map of her. I knew to the marrow how the turn went, and what she did, and how she came, and I was chief, and I was going to spend every scrap of it putting one man beyond her reach, if it was the last thing the Count ever recorded me doing. So I did not learn Owen's stories to be kind to him on the night. I told him, against everything the book begged, against everything the old man had bled onto the page, I sat that green kid down in the galley on his second watch and told him all of it. The ship, the turn, the web, the marks. I showed him the book, the names, Silas 5 times and now 6. I showed him the faint silver lines on the back of my own hand and told him what his would look like after. And I watched his face do the thing the old man's writing had promised. It went from listening to worried to careful. The careful a young man goes when he has decided the older one across the table is not well. By the end, he was nodding slow and saying, "All right, Chief, all right," in the voice you use on a drunk, and reaching, without meaning to, for the comms panel on the wall. To have somebody inward look in on the old keeper who had finally cracked out in the quiet, it slid off him like water off glass, exactly the way the book said it would. I had spent my one true thing on that kid and bought nothing, less than nothing. Now he watched me careful and gave me room, and I had made myself a stranger to the one man I was trying to save. Then I tried the other way, the hard way, the way that did not need him to believe a word. If I could not put Owen beyond her reach with the truth, I would put the whole station beyond her reach without it. I knew how she came in. I knew the clamps fired on a stamp in my own hand while I stood somewhere else forgetting. So I went down into the clamp control myself, days ahead, cold, sober, and clear, and I cut them. Not in the system, in the metal. I pulled the drive fuses on the main lock clamps, carried them down to my cabin, and locked them in the old man's kit box. When the night came and the phantom mortar fired, there would be nothing for it to fire. No clamps, no hands to reach out and take her. She could drift on down the lane past the station with no way left to open its arms. It did not work. And the way it did not work is the thing I think about most. The clamps fired anyway. I had the fuses in a locked box in my own cabin, in my own hand, and the clamps fired on the night, dead on time. I ran down to the control while they were firing and opened the box, and the fuses were gone, back in their sockets, seated and warm. There was a work order logged in the system, closed and stamped clean under my hand. Fuses reinstalled this watch. Routine maintenance. Chief authorization. I had no memory of it. None. My marks were cold and bright, and I understood then that I had never once been outside her reach at any point in any of it. The man who cut the clamps and the man who put them back were the same man. She did not have to fight the keeper. She only had to wait for the mark to wake and walk him down in the dark to do the sensible thing. And the sensible thing was always, every time, to make the station ready to take her in. I could no more keep her out than my own hand could refuse to pull back off a flame. The station was hers. I was hers. The only thing on Halden that was not hers was the book, because the book is paper, and paper has no socket she can seat a fuse into. Owen went into the web on the night with the rest of them, and came back in the morning grinning and green, remembering none of what I had told him. Easy with me again, the careful gone, a clean slate. And I was almost grateful for that much, that at least the strangeness I had put between us got wiped along with everything else. I learned his stories properly then. The mother inward, the doorway. I kept them. I have been kind to him in the small unknowing ways ever since. I wrote his name in the book, in pencil, ready. I have moved it to ink and back to pencil more times than I can stand, because Owen keeps coming back the way they all keep coming back, and that is not a mercy, whatever it looks like from outside. A thing that dies once is grieved once. Out here I grieve them on a turn, forever, and set the pencil ready for the next. I read the book to stay real. That became the shape of my private hours. I needed proof against my own mind out there, and the mark was always working to take it, so I read the old man's 4 volumes the way another man might read scripture. Not for comfort. There was none in them. For ballast. I read the turns before mine, the crews before mine, names I had never known set against losses the system had never recorded. I read the old man growing old across the pages, his hand steady for years and years, then, near the end of the 4th book, starting to shake, the letters going bigger and fewer. A man wearing out in real time, on paper. And I read the entry where he first wrote my name into the keeper's line, years back, in a turn I had no memory of. Kel is the other reasonable one now. She gives him back every time. He will carry it after me if he lives. I understood then that the old man had been grooming me for the book across turns I would never remember, teaching me to keep account I did not know I was learning. The night he put it in my hands at the board had not been the first time. It had only been the last. The time he finally quit, hoping he could carry it himself, and gambled the whole thing on my being unreasonable enough someday to do what he never could. And in the back of the 4th book, On the last written page before the blank ones that were mine and the old man's worn shaking hand was the thing he had never said to any of us out loud. The thing I think he could only set on paper, where the words could not slide off and be lost. It is the truest map of her anybody ever made. She is not cruel, he had written. I used to think she was cruel, and it near destroyed me. She is not. Cruelty needs a someone on the far end of it, and needs to know it is a someone. She does not know we are someones. She found a station on a quiet lane with a crew that renews itself, and she does to us what a beekeeper does to a hive. She takes the honey and leaves the bees and comes back when the comb is full. She has no more malice in her than the man has for the bees, and no more mercy, and that is the whole horror of her. The worst thing that has ever happened to us is not even a wrong done to us. It is a use we were put to by something that never once wondered whether we minded. Keep the count anyway, not because it stops her. It does not stop her. Keep it because a bee that keeps a count is not only honey anymore. It is the one thing we have that she cannot take. Some nights it is the only thing that has kept me a man instead of comb. I closed the fourth book on that page and never opened it there again because I could only stand to read it the once. I started my own book, the fifth, and I kept the count in it, turn after turn, name after name, the same 5 names, mostly, over and over. Silas Wren 5 times, 6, 7, Colton, Bo, Graham, and now and then a new one. When the company rotated a man in to fill a slot the board pretended was already filled, a man who came aboard grinning with no idea. I would look at him across the galley on his first watch and know I was looking at food. I would learn his stories so I could be kind to him in the ways he would never know he needed. And I would write his name in the book before she ever came because I had learned to write them in early in pencil ready and move them to ink when she took them. That readiness was maybe the most broken thing about what I had become. A man keeping a list of his friends in pencil so he could finish it fast in ink on the night. I did it. I am not ashamed of it. It is the count, and the count is all there is. One long quiet, deep in a stretch where she stayed away so long I half let myself believe she was finished with us. I did a thing I had been afraid to do since the old man handed me the books. I went back to the first one, not the fourth, where Emmett's hand ran clear. The first. The oldest, the one gone the color of weak tea, the spine cracked to threads, the early pages worn so soft they felt like cloth. The hand in the front of the first book was not Emmett's. I sat with that a long time. I had come out here believing, in whatever corner of me still tried to believe things, that Emmett Dorn was the start of it, that he had been the first man to notice, the first to keep account, and that the whole weight ran back to one stubborn old spacer and no further. The hand in the front of the first book put an end to that. It was a smaller hand, tighter, an older kind of writing, and it was keeping the same count in the same shape. Names in a column, dates as near as the man could reckon them. And a line near the top of the first page, in that cramped dead stranger's hand, that I have not been able to get back out of my head since. She came again in the winter of the long quiet, it said, the way she always comes. The way she always comes. Already, on the first page of the first book, she was an old thing. Already the man writing it was not the first. He was only the first whose ink had lasted. I turned the pages back as far as they went, and near the very front, before that cramped hand even started, there were 3 or 4 leaves so faded I could not read a word on them. Not blank. Written on. I could see the ghosts of the lines slanting across them, the shape of a column, the rhythm of names, all of it lifted down past reading by time the same as the mark lifts a night down past reading in a day. Another hand before the hand I could read. And I understood there was no bottom to it. The book I held was the 4th of Emmett's 4, and Emmett's 4 sat on top of the first man's, and the first man I could read sat on top of others I never would. And it ran back like that into the dark, as far as there had been men out here to be taken, and one reasonable one left behind to write it down. No beginning. Just the oldest ink I could still make out, and a stranger's steady hand keeping the count I keep now, and under him older strangers, all of us the same man in the end, the one she leaves. I have wondered, on the bad nights, whether the first of them is still aboard her, whether the oldest honey is still in the comb, whether somewhere in that web, deeper than Emmett, deeper than the 60, there was a man who was keeping this count before there were words on paper to keep it in, taken and handed back and taken again, so many turns that there is nothing left of him but the taking. I hope not. It is the one thing out here I let myself flatly hope. But I have read the first page of the first book, and I know what it says, and hope is a thin thing to set against the way she always comes. The relay started throwing errors in the 9th week of the longest quiet I had known, and I knew before Graham finished griping about it what the errors were. They were her, the front of her. The relay catching the edge of something coming in off the lane and not knowing what to make of it, the same as Graham hearing a whisper before it had a shape, had always been the front of her. My marks woke that same watch. I had not felt them in a month, and I woke in my rack with the back of my hand gone cold and itching behind the meaning of things, and I lay in the hum and knew it the way you know a change in the weather in an old break. The turn had come round. Out on the dark lane, a cold return was sliding in toward Halden on a heading threaded right down the middle. In a watch or two, Graham would sit up straight at his board and key the all-call and say the word that starts it, big, and my clean, grinning crew would come up to the ring at a run with the money already in their eyes. I got up. I did not wait for the all-call. I went up to the ring alone, in the quiet before the watch, and looked at the scope, and there she was, still far out, still just a cold whisper. But coming, the warden on her turn, come back to Halden for the honey. I stood in front of the board, where the old man had stood, where I had stood 11 times, or 100. I will never know the number, and I have stopped wanting to. And I felt the whole shape of it close over me like the inner door coming down, and I understood, standing there, the same thing I understand at the end of every telling of this, that I have done it before, that I did not get out, that no one gets out, that the only thing I ever got out with is the book, and even the book is only a thing I copy forward, turn after turn, and I am no longer sure the first hand that wrote it was mine, or the old man's, or the hand of some keeper before either of us, passing the same names down a line of tired men, with no beginning I can find and no end I will live to see. Graham keyed the all-call 2 watches later, right on the shape of it I had learned across all the turns. His voice came flat and wrong the way it always came. Contact on the lane, no transponder, big. I heard my crew come awake all over the station, the racks and the hatches and the fast feet in the passages, and I was already in the ring when they got there. I watched them crowd in behind Graham with the sleep still on them and the boredom breaking into hope. I watched the money come up in their eyes as the profile built line by line, the length of her, the shape of her, and then the name pulled up out of the cold return off a registry chip, too dumb to know its ship was dead. Warden. She is called the Warden. I watched Cole whistle low and Bo go bright, and Silas put his big hand on the back of Graham's chair and lean in. It was the same. It was exactly the same. It is always exactly the same. And they turned to me the way we had all once turned to the old man, because I was the chief now. I was the oldest hand. I was the one who was supposed to know. And I gave the order Emmett gave. I could not give it. We do not put a line on her, I said. We log her. We report her inward. We let her drift on through. She is a grave, and you do not dig in a grave. I said it knowing every step of how it would go, knowing it would not hold, knowing the exact reasonable shape of the thing that would come back at me. And it came, right on time, out of Colt first and then the rest. That is a survey hull, Chief. That is everybody's rotations. We do not have to board her to tag her. We cannot hand our own salvage to the next crew over a bad feeling. And Silas, steady Silas, rubbed the back of his neck and said the sensible thing that turned it, the same sensible thing, near the same words. I stood there and let them talk me and each other into it, exactly the way the old man had stood and led us, because I have learned she does not need me to fail to stop them. She only needs me to be unable to. And I am 11 years, or 100, or a line of tired keepers with no beginning, and not one of us has ever found the words that hold. There are no words that hold. Reasonable men built the whole machine of the world to walk straight into this with their eyes open and call it good sense. So we will tag her and hold her on the leash. The leash will go slack in the night. The clamps will fire under a stamp in my own hand I will not remember making, and she will come in and dock herself folded mouth to steel throat. One of us will not be able to stand the not knowing and will go to look. The frost will climb the wall. A helmet will sit neat in it, facing back the way it came. We will go into the tube after him, because we cannot seal a door on a man. The tube will be warm and full of air she kept for us, and past the folded lip it will be warmer, and there will be the marks on the walls that are almost words, and the men in the web with the light moving through them, and the chorus that says, "Come and see, it does not hurt," and it will be Silas hanging newest in the cords with his arms already out, or a colt, or a new man whose stories I learned so I could be kind to him. And I will run, because the worst and oldest part of me always runs. I will not go back. I will come down the tube with the yellow light ahead and the wet patient sound behind and my name in a dead friend's voice at my back, and I will hit the lock and the door will come down, and I will lie on the deck of my own station and understand, for what my whole life insists is the first time that I have done all of this before. I have already written that part in the front of this book, the tube, the light, the voice. I write the ending first now, before the turn takes hold, because it is the part the mark reaches for soonest. I have lost it before and had to build it back out of the shape it left behind, and I would rather have it in my own ink than trust the shape. That is why I keep starting there, not for the horror of it, because it is the piece I am most afraid of losing, and I guard hardest what I have already dropped once. There is a charge in her. I hold to that on the turns when I can hold to anything. The old man set an arm charge in the breathing core of her the last real night of his life, and he never got to press it, and she never bothered to put it out, because a charge is a thing, and she has no hands for things and no fear of them either. So, somewhere in the warm, wet heart of that ship, deep in the web among the men she keeps, there is a coffee can of station demolition with a small red eye still lit, waiting, armed, on an old dead man's slack hand. I have never reached it. I do not know that I ever will. Every turn I tell myself this is the one. This is the turn I do not run. This is the turn I go the other way, deeper, in toward the core instead of out toward the light, and put my hand on the old man's hand and press the thing down, and be the number she cannot carry. And let the whole ugly patient hive of her go up in one white flower, and take me and the 60 souls and all my grinning ghosts with it. Because being taken all the way, being ended, would be a mercy set beside being kept in good condition. Every turn I tell myself that, and every turn the worst part of me takes the wheel at the folded lip and runs me out toward the yellow light, because the oldest part of a man is not brave. It does not want to end the trap. It only wants to live. And living is the trap. She built me out of exactly that, and she knew what she was building. Maybe the next keeper will be less reasonable than I am. That is the only prayer I have left, and I leave it here in the book the way the old man left me his. A weight and a map, and a thin, cold hope folded into the same paper. Maybe the man who reads this after me, in a turn I will not remember, when my hand has gone big and shaking near the end of a book, maybe he will be the unreasonable one at last, the one who goes the other way at the lip, the one who reaches the old man's hand and presses it down. I will not know him. He will not know me. But he will have the count, and the count is the line of us, all the tired keepers back into the dark. If one of us ever does it, ever finally does the one unreasonable thing, then all of us did. Every keeper who ever wrote a name in pencil so he could finish it fast in ink. That is as close to saved as men like us are ever going to get, and out here I have learned to take the mercies I can reach. The scope says she is 4 hours out. My crew has gone down to eat, arguing about the salvage, happy, alive, in the only way she leaves them. Graham is putting the company on the record with my objection, word for word, because I told him to, because the old man told me to, because it is in the book. The mark on the back of my hand is cold and bright and working, and I can feel it lifting at the edges of this even as I write it down. So I am going to stop soon. I am going to go to the front of the book and read the tube and the yellow light and the voice one more time while I still know they are mine. And then I am going to do my job. I am going to go down to the galley. I am going to sit with Silas. I am going to let him tell me about his kids, and it is going to be the first time for him, and I am going to look at the two faces I could draw in the dark and say they are beautiful. How old are they now? And I am going to keep the count. Nora, if any of this ever reaches you, and it will not, because the relay is hers and always was, I did not stay for the money. I want that one thing true somewhere, even here, where it can do neither of us any good. I stayed because leaving meant handing this book to no one, and I could not. That is the closest to brave I ever got, and it is not brave at all. It is just one more reasonable man doing the sensible thing, which is the only thing she has ever needed from any of us. The clamps will fire tonight. I can feel it coming the way you feel a break coming in an old bone. And the last thing I will think, before the yellow light and the deck and the understanding, before it all goes soft and dreamlike, and I wake new to a whisper on Graham's board, contact on the lane, no transponder, big. The last thing I will think is what I think every turn, at the very end, running, her, at my back, in my friend's stolen voice. Wait, she will say, in his voice. Wyatt, wait, and the worst part of me will not, and the best part of me always would have, and somewhere between the two of them is the whole of what she left me, running down a warm, bright tube toward a station that forgets, keeping account in a book she cannot read, waiting on a keeper braver than I have ever managed to be, out on the lane, where nothing passes, for months at a time, and the turning goes on, and the turning goes on, and the turning goes on.